In our previous episodes, we learned that currently there are over 2.5 lakh children in India residing in childcare institutions. When they turn 18, they're expected to leave the place that has cared for them, the only place that they call home. So, what happens to these young people when they enter the big, bad world? Welcome to Care of the State, a podcast by Catalyst for Social Action that sheds light on what happens to orphaned and vulnerable children in India. The show helps you understand the system of institutional care, fostering, adoption, aftercare, and how organizations and government institutions work to care and protect these children. Experts from Catalyst for Social Action, or CSA, will be talking to lawyers, researchers, NGOs, and other experts from the space who will help us understand what's happening, what are the struggles, and what can be done to provide a safe environment for these children to grow and reintegrate into society. On this episode of Care of the State, we're going to talk about aftercare for careleavers. So what is a careleaver? The term careleaver refers to someone between the age of 18 and 21 years who's preparing to leave a childcare institution, or CCI. These children have spent a considerable portion of their childhood and adolescence with limited exposure to the world outside. Preparing to integrate into society without any safety net of family or a home or adequate education or money or a job would be a challenge for anyone, even if you had all those things. So when these young people turn 18 and have to exit the CCI, it's important that they're not abandoned again. To help us understand what happens to careleavers when they turn 18, here's Gita Gopal, founder of A Future for Every Child, an organization that supports the journeys of orphaned and vulnerable youth to adulthood and prepares them to be economically self-sufficient.
Yeah, so the Juvenile Justice Act, I call it an aspirational document because it lays out all these things they would like to see happen, but doesn't actually happen in the ground. The childcare institutions are supposed to be inspected and monitored, and all the children are supposed to be kept track of. Now, CCIs only have responsibility up to the age of 18. The Juvenile Justice Act does say that after the age of 18, youth leaving childcare institutions, let's call them careleavers, need to be provided aftercare support. And aftercare support includes housing up to the age of 21. It states they should get help in integrating into mainstream society and help with job training. And they're also supposed to get 2,000 rupees a month. Now, all of this is stated, but very little of this actually happens in practice. Less than 20% of the CCIs have any linkage to aftercare services. Most of them don't, and we don't even know what quality of aftercare services they provide. And this 2,000 rupees a month that they're supposed to get, I think most of India, it does not reach the children. I mean, the money is certainly very helpful, but it's not anywhere near enough to help them integrate into society. I mean, just getting 2,000 rupees a month when you're 18, but you have no idea how to educate yourself or how to plan for independent living, just getting that money is not very useful, though it would be great if they did get it. Basically, the Juvenile Justice Act does a lot to help and track children up to the age of 18, and then we just seem to drop them and expect that they will integrate somehow into mainstream society, even though that's a really crucial age at which they need help.
Gita Gopal, along with Catalyst for Social Action, co-authored a white paper called Empowering Youth Leaving Care at 18, which looks at CSA's aftercare programs that supported 300 careleavers. In it, they talk about bridging the gap to adulthood, the reality of aftercare, and what needs to change in the system. So before we get into understanding what aftercare services should be provided, Satyajeet Mazumdar, head of Advocacy at CSA, asked Gita Gopal if she has an estimate of the number of careleavers in India.
Can you give us an idea of the number of youth who are basically aging out of childcare institutions every year in India?
Unfortunately, the government does not keep track of them. The government does have a sense of the number of children who are in the childcare institutions up to the age of 18. Now, unfortunately, because the government does not keep track after they're 18, what we do is kind of look at the ratio of children in the different ages according to the census. And the ages of 16 to 18, the percentage leads us to say there are about 60,000 children in that age group, 16 to 18, who are facing aging out every year.
The Juvenile Justice Act of 2015 makes provisions for preparing children to leave care and become independent adults, facilitating their reintegration into mainstream society. On the most basic level, they'll require money, housing, and education. But is that all?
I mean, of course, they need money to get some employable skills. And that is crucial. They have to get either vocational training or, go into college for something. That is crucial. But just that alone is absolutely, that's necessary, but not sufficient. What is needed is support and mentoring and the feeling that somebody cares for them, that somebody cares that they're there and is rooting for their success. And they're not just another number or not important. It's that somebody cares. I think that is really important. So money is important, but also this support and mentoring that they get. I think another thing that's really important is being connected to other careleavers so that they can see young adults who've been in their situation, who have managed to succeed or, have a stable life and have a family and things like that. So a person who has come in the same path is the best example and the best mentor for them. So I think all of these are very critical components.
According to a 2019 article by indiaspend.com, more than 27% of careleavers said that they had not received any form of aftercare, and 44% said that they were not consulted in their rehabilitation planning. According to a study conducted by Udayan, the real figures of those who failed to get support were likely to be higher, since a lot of these young people fall off the radar and become largely untraceable after leaving childcare homes. They become, quote-unquote, nobody's responsibility. We spoke to Dr. Kiran Modi, founder and managing trustee of Udayan, an NGO that works to empower vulnerable children, women, and youth in 25 cities across 14 states. She takes us through what institutions or the government ideally should be doing to create better aftercare programs.
So the idea was they get community integration from the beginning. And as the children started growing up, we started realizing after 18, the juvenile laws of the country don't permit them to be in the same home. So they need separate facilities. One also started realizing that these children who have been multiply placed and suffered innumerable trauma and abuse, you cannot expect them to be like a common child who has reached class 12 at the age of 18. Their education had been disrupted many, many times, from their own home to the streets, and from the street to the juvenile system, and from juvenile system to homes after homes. Then they land up with you. So the education really goes for a toss. So you need to enable them to continue with their education and continue with their vocational training. At the same time, the urgency of this reaching adulthood is there. So one has to prepare accordingly and also teach them different kinds of transition planning. How do you adjust in society? So as our children started growing up, the need was coming out very acutely that at the age of 18, I cannot leave them on the crossroads with nobody to look after them and no, family support, no institutional support, even though the law mandates it. So that was the biggest sorrow, that the law mandates it, still there is nowhere these children can go. When the children come out, youth come out, their identity papers are in a mess. They don't have any legal awareness. They wouldn't know where do they get accommodation. Then independent living skills are not taught. While you are in a childcare institution, even the DCPOs and the CWC doesn't want the children to do any kind of work, cooking, washing, nothing. So the children at the age of 18, they don't have any independent living skills. They don't go out in the market to buy vegetables. They don't know how to run a home. then, they don't have interpersonal skills or social skills, because while they are in the institution, they're confined to each other. In many children's homes that we are noticing now, when we are working with different state governments and doing some more research, in many of the institutions, children are not even going to school. A school is made possible for them right in the home, where a couple of teachers come and they teach them. How do you expect them to develop interpersonal skills? One thing that we noticed was very much needed was emotional well-being, because at this age, when you are leaving the institution, you were already traumatized when you entered the institution, and your emotional well-being was not taken care of due to the paucity of counselors and also the funds. It's hugely expensive, to give psychological counseling to children. So most of the time, their issues are not dealt with. And when they are nearing 18 and they know that they have to go out with no support, just imagine what kind of re-traumatization they again face. So they need support here also. Health-wise, we felt, the physical health also needs to be looked into. There could be many issues concerning that. Education and vocational skills, I've already told you that it had been disrupted. And at the age of 18, they have not been able to achieve anything, either 10th or 12th, or even a vocational training certificate. How do they get into jobs? So that means, at the age of 18, there is no career. There is no financial independence coming up for them. So these are the 8 domains, which we felt that the youth must be trained into while they are in the institution itself.
Udayan Care conducted a crucial study called Beyond 18, Leaving Childcare Institutions, a study of aftercare practices in 5 states of India in 2019, with support from UNICEF, Tata Trust, and the state governments of Delhi, Gujarat, Karnataka, Maharashtra, and Rajasthan. The study was based on a sample of 435 care leavers. The study showed that 70% of care leavers were not aware of aftercare services and other welfare schemes that can be accessed by them. While they were living in CCIs, 2 out of every 5 children went through multiple placements in CCIs, which adversely affected their education and attachment patterns. Care leavers face recurring emotional distress and don't seek professional help. A large portion of care leavers neither completed their education nor had mentors to guide them. Besides the lack of support in aftercare services, Kiran Modi helps us understand the stigma that a care leaver experiences and how they deal with the pressure of acceptance in society.
I think children and youth coming out of alternative care system, they do face a lot of stigma, because society out there, and especially in India, I think we have this kind of a thing. No, my child can't play with this kind of a child. This I've heard so many times, and it really makes your heart bleed. As it is, they have lower self-esteem, and then, being stigmatized. In the classroom, if anything gets stolen, the teacher would also point out to them. The teacher knows that this child is coming from a childcare institution, may not know even the parent's name. The teacher would ask, what's your father's name, mother's name? Like she would ask everyone else. I mean, there is very little awareness of the kind of emotional turmoil these children go through. So I think we really need to do something about it. And when they become 18 and they start looking for a job, it's absolutely difficult, because, they feel that these children have suffered trauma. They still must be wallowing in self-pity. They may not have self-esteem. They may not be fitting into my organization. They may have other vices, which my other people don't have, in all their imagination. Another stigma that I've come across again and again, and especially in India, when you want your girls to get married, it's so difficult to find them a family, because in India, as all of us know, 2 families come together. So most of the families, they don't want an orphan girl to come to their house, or they'd want to take an orphan boy as their son-in-law. And we are always hoping that these children will go into families, which doesn't happen. It takes absolutely marathon, debates for the families before they understand and accept the children. Most of the time, the youth today are a little different. They are able to find their own mates. Then the families have to agree. But, this stigmatization just because you are being brought up in a childcare institution does not mean that you don't have values. So I think this stigma has to be addressed.
When you consider the vital role aftercare has in the successful transition of vulnerable young people to adulthood, there's a significant pressure on NGOs and other institutions to provide holistic care that will help them with things like employability, the physical and mental stresses of the day-to-day, medical care, financial independence, housing and running one's own home, food and staying healthy, plus being able to gain the skills to assimilate with people and society at large. That's a lot of things and a lot of pressure. Which leaves us with the question, does the government have a role to play in the life of a care leaver? Kiran gives Satyajeet details about the housing provisions and funds allocated.
So actually, ICPS, the budgetary provisions for aftercare in India, if you have 15 districts, if a state has 15 districts, they are given 15 lakhs. Doesn't matter how many institutions are there. Similarly, those states who have more than 15 districts, they get 30 lakhs. Those states with more than 30 districts, they get 45 lakhs. Now, youth can be given up to an amount of 2,000 rupees. It's not even 2,000 rupees. It's up to 2,000 rupees, which is again decided by the CWC. So you
2,000 rupees per month?
Per month.
Okay.
So 24,000. I mean, it won't even cover somebody's food expense. And if somebody falls sick, if there are, educational expenses, there are counseling expenses, there are hundreds of expenses, conveyance, how is one to, work with this? If there is a family, if the family is functional, then to restore them to the family. But restoration also creates a problem in the sense if you are not going to support them later. Because, if the family was sound enough, the child would be with them. Because the family was not sound, that's why the child found its way into a childcare institution. So after spending so much time, energy, money into them, and then you ask the family to support, how is it possible? Family restoration is very good, but at the same time, the funding support has to be there. Otherwise, the child will not be able to continue.
So probably when the child goes out of the institution on turning 18, the ones who have a family would have a place to go back to, would have somebody to go back to. But where do the orphans go? I mean, are they supposed to look for their own housing? Who do they live with?
So actually, in most of the states, they do have aftercare home. But even a big state won't have more than 1 or 2 aftercare homes for boys. And normally, the girls are pushed into Swadhargriha or the destitute women's hostel, which is a very sad thing because these children have been exposed to a little bit of education and they are traumatized themselves. And to put them with the destitute women, you are increasing their trauma. You are taking away all opportunities of further studies or proper vocational training. So there should be more aftercare homes, but they should be again like a group home, so that a few children could live together on their own and run the home, and they are funded by the state or by the NGO with the help of the state. When we spoke to these 450 youth and when we speak to our own children in our homes, they are not interested in going to government aftercare homes because they feel they have been institutionalized. There have been so many rules and regulations. And at this level, when they've become an adult, they want freedom. They don't want to be in that confined environment.
So we've been able to gather the limitations of the current system in India for aftercare and what are the repercussions of it on the lives of vulnerable 18-year-olds. Now, whether it's the lack of a tracking system of those who age out of CCIs to the lack of a better system to prepare them for their future. And, of course, ongoing guidance and care as they go through a barrage of challenges once they're on their own. What can be done so that these young people aren't thrown in the deep end, but find a way to float with ease, independence, and a fulfilling, healthy life? Satyajeet finds out from Gita.
How would a child who has spent considerable time in an institution, I mean, if we expect him or her to be reintegrated into the society, what would that look like?
So let us take what we do as parents. When our children are in their teenage years, we try to teach them life skills and soft skills like communication and self-esteem and all of those things, as well as train them for some kind of career. And then we help them get into college, support them until they're ready to get employed and become independent. That is what is needed for a young adult to have a stable, independent life. What these care leavers actually see is while they were in the childcare institution, they're not being exposed to all the things that they should be exposed. It's a very cocooned environment. It's very limited in the kind of information they get and the kind of exposure they have and the kind of skills they build up. And then at 18, basically, they're said, now you're on your own. Go figure out what you want to do with your life. And there's nobody to actually help them figure out what careers they might be good for, to mentor them through difficulties, to finance them through the training, and just be there as an adult in their lives until they get a job. So what it means to really be integrated into the mainstream society, I think, is having all the skills and the training needed to have economic self-sufficiency and be able to live independently. Just providing a roof and some stipend every month does not teach them or does not help them develop the skills needed to become self-sufficient. So we need a lot more than that, and we need to figure out how to provide all of that to our caregivers.
While it is the duty of the government to protect every child and nurture them into responsible and able citizens of India, there are institutions that have taken the onus upon themselves to provide aftercare so that young people don't fall back into the same state that they emerged from. Satyajeet talks to Vipul Jain, co-founder of Catalyst for Social Action, about what care leavers need when they exit childcare institutions.
So when we speak about the aftercare services, what do you think are the components of a system which would ensure that youth who are leaving childcare institutions do not fall back into the cycle of poverty and distress?
When we think about aftercare services, these aftercare services have to start while the child is in an institution. You go to a childcare institute and say, what do you want to be? I want to be a doctor. What does it take to be a doctor? And by the way, apart from being a doctor, there are like another 30 professions that are in the medical field. You could become a laboratory technician. You could become a nurse. You could become an attendant. So it's aligned with what you want to do, but maybe that is the roadmap that you could take. So career awareness is really important. I think in today's world, some digital literacy is really important, some financial literacy, spoken English. So we should start equipping these children, right, while they're in the institute for this and mentally prepare them for the time that they have to leave. Once they leave, then of course they are out there in a world which they've never faced. So they require support. And support is, of course, some financial support, a place to live. It could be an aftercare home, as the government policy suggests that there should be aftercare homes or hostels for these children. Then they require guidance into what career, and then admission into a skilling institute or into higher education, whatever be the path that care leaver has chosen for her or himself. So some guidance, mentoring, that is very, very critical in helping them to navigate for the next few years as they discover themselves, as they find their feet, as they get into a job and learn how to live independently.
So what role would you say skill development organizations and NGOs have to play in ensuring better aftercare to care leavers?
So, there are a large number of skilling institutes in our country, right? And the Pradhan Mantri scheme is also available to fund course fees for some of these skilling courses. So that's not the big problem as far as the children who are coming from childcare institutes are concerned. The big missing link is the guidance, which helps them to choose a career and get admitted into the right skilling institute that matches their ability, as well as the skilling courses well and has a good placement record and all of that stuff. So that guidance is missing. And most NGOs who are focused around livelihoods or around skilling, they provide this type of guidance in, let's say, schools or in communities. But because the numbers are so small and so scattered in childcare institutes, they don't focus on that. That is, I think, one of the big gaps. Whatever guidance they may get from the trustees or the management of the childcare institute, but beyond that, they have nobody else to help them find the right path and then take the steps to be on that path. These are children who have been living in a cocoon. So their understanding of the real world out there is much less than what it would be for a child who's growing up in the environment. So that's why this becomes really, really important. The work that CSA does is basically, if we are working with the childcare institution, then we start when they're like 14, 15 years of age and start giving them certain skills, life skills and real life skills that will help them. If they have come into our aftercare program when they were 18 years of age, that's okay. We'll start working with them from that point onwards. And the first step is, of course, conversations to understand the child's circumstances, his history, if he has a family, what the family wants him to do, his own aspirations, his own likes and dislikes, his academic record to date, and a discussion around what is the way forward in an interactive way. And once that's decided, then we actually support the care leaver in following that path, be it finding a place for the care leaver to stay, be it paying for the day-to-day expenses, getting admission into the skilling or in higher education and paying for that. And most importantly, as I mentioned, all along the journey, being in touch with the child and just ensuring that as problems come up, they have somebody to talk to. What is very amazing is that a lot of the care leavers who have gone through that journey actually want to help other children in the childcare institutes where they are passed out from or other care leavers. So it's amazing to see how much they appreciate whatever support they get and how open they are to offer this support because they've seen the value of that type of support. So that's really in a nutshell what CSA does. And our intent is, of course, to stay in touch with our alumni for a really long time. But certainly it's our commitment that till they complete whatever course they started off on, until they graduate from that and are into a job, we will provide them with financial support to make sure that they complete that first milestone in their path towards independent living.
Providing education, skilling, and vocational training is crucial to help them gain employment. However, a care leaver also needs housing, healthcare, and the ability to manage their own life. While childcare institutions are responsible for developing an individual care plan for every child, organizations like Udayan Care have found better ways to integrate care leavers into society. Kiran tells us more.
We are 35 mentor parents who are looking after these 150 children in our 17 homes, and same mentor parents continue to look after the aftercare youth who are there with us, minimum 45 to 50 at any given point of time till they migrate into society. This mentoring and close-knit hand-holding is really helping. It's not necessary for every child to be able to go to SOAS. If they are able to finish their class 12th, because this child came to me as a pregnant girl of 13, I can't, and totally, disrupted education. I can't expect her to go to SOAS. I also need to put my expectations right. What is the most important thing for her? What is achievable for her in her scheme of things? What is her dream and desire? We have to fan that and support her so that by the time she leaves the institution, at least she's class 12th and she's done some vocational training so that she can get into a job and then help them design their career progression. And many of them, after they left us and they started working, they have continued to fulfill their undergraduate studies. So it all depends, and I think nothing can replace this close-knit mentoring. I don't believe that we don't have mentors in the society. There are so many people who really want to do something. All we need to do is to reach out and we need to train them so that, there is no child abuse and the similar kind of message goes to the children. So it requires a lot of hard work. We also started, collectivizing youth in Delhi. I think at least I like to take the credit that we were the first ones to collectivize the youth. And we presented in these biennial international conferences that we organize every alternate year. And we presented the clan, we call it clan here. The youth themselves have formed, in the beginning, they needed little push. Now they are together. And they are becoming such a support system to each other. So if we really want good outcomes, they have to be collected together. They have to be collectivized. We have started in Bhopal also, in Patna also, and in Hyderabad. Similarly, many institutions, they have started collectivizing the youth, which is very good. And I'm sure this collectivization where you meet someone of your kind, someone who has suffered similar abuses and, similar traumas of life, while they were growing up, you can really interact with each other much better than any other youth coming out of a normal household.
While on one hand, organizations like Udayan have been working towards providing optimum aftercare and grooming them to venture into this competitive world. On the other hand, Gita's foundation, A Future for Every Child, aids multiple organizations to provide the best care and protection to vulnerable children in India.
So we started A Future for Every Child 3 years ago after my husband and I retired. And we wanted to do something in the careleaver space. And the reason we came to this particular age group is because we have 3 children. Our youngest daughter is adopted. So we know how much we put into launching our children into adulthood and how much we still do to help them, mentor them, listen to them, and they're in their 20s and 30s right now. So when we look at these 18-year-olds, to me, they look like children, even though they're considered adult. And we felt that it was the last possible chance we have to help this population before they just disappear into society. And if we can help them at this time, then there's this multiplicative effect because it helps their future families and prevents the cycle of poverty from repeating itself. So when we formed A Future for Every Child, we decided to focus only on this careleaver population. We only work on children and young adults who age out of institutional care. And we provide career counseling, financial support for education, help with job placement, and then mentoring for 2 years to make sure that they are on a stable path. And we are located in California. We do this by working with partners in India. And we have 3 very stellar partners in India, Catalyst for Social Action in Mumbai, Udayan in Delhi, and Sevalya in Tamil Nadu. So we work with our partners to deliver programs. And we are very much about collecting data, figuring out how good the program is, how best we can help the careleavers. And so we work with all our partners to improve the efficiency and the efficacy of the programs. We started in 2019, so it's just 2 years, and we're supporting about 340 youth, of whom 66 have actually finished studying and 40 are employed. So that's very satisfying. And I think some of these numbers are slightly low because of COVID, because everything got, just extended because of COVID. Otherwise, we'd have even more employed at this point.
Processes become easier when you receive help. And the state also has a responsibility towards its young citizens, and particularly careleavers, who need that support the most. But is the state doing enough? Satyajeet asked Vipul.
What changes would you suggest in the present system of aftercare for children who have grown up in institutional care?
So first and foremost, every single child should be on our radar. I think the biggest missing link is the fact that once they're outside the institution, they're on nobody's radar. So first of all, I would suggest that each state keep a database of every single care leaver and keep updating this with the child as the child progresses with further data. So first of all, keeping track of every single child. Then, of course, the state under the ICPS scheme is supposed to provide some financial support. So I know that in Madhya Pradesh, for example, they provide 2,000 rupees per month for a period of 3 years. That goes a long way in helping these children or these young adults take care of their basic expenses. Third is aftercare homes. I think these care leavers do require some place where they can stay, hostels or aftercare homes, or encouraging even the childcare institutes to maybe make provision for care leavers to stay. I think that's really important. Then there are schemes. There is the Pradhan Mantri Skilling Scheme, for example. There are facilities for scholarships for tribal children or for those coming from backward castes, etc. But a lot of these care leavers are not aware of what schemes are available to them. So I think training or the assistance to say, hey, these are the schemes available and this is how you can apply, right? I think that's really important. And in some states, they issue an orphan certificate for children who are truly orphans. And in Maharashtra, for example, they have made some reservations in government jobs and educational institutions for orphans. So that, of course, would be, again, very useful to help these children find a way forward.
As it's been the case for everyone in India and across the world, the COVID-19 pandemic has only made the situation for care leavers even worse. While care leavers in India were already battling with issues of housing, financial independence, unemployment, and societal stigma, the pandemic only added to their difficulties. What is the course of action aftercare institutions can carry out to do some damage control to the ongoing situation? Kiran Modi explains with examples.
I think as it is, when they leave care institutions, they are traumatized and they feel unsupported. So you can imagine how it heavily weighs on their heads, on their minds and hearts. And pandemic has really worsened the situation. When they find themselves, without jobs and with no education, what kind of jobs in any case. So whatever they had, all that has been taken away. So they are in a bad situation. When we spoke to the governments, we realized that nothing much was happening from the government side. The DCPOs may be having the lists of the last 3 years, but nothing was done. And at least in Maharashtra, I know that they had ordered that all the DCPOs must collect the youth who have gone out their lists. But after that, what happened, I have no idea. Similarly, in other states, at least I am not aware if any kind of a support was given by the governments to the care leavers.
In an ideal world, one expects that when someone provides a solution to a prevalent problem, the concerned body acts upon it to provide the best results. However, Satyajeet poses a burning question to Gita, which will summarize the detrimental effects of the lack of aftercare in the lives of 18-year-olds, who are supposed to be the future of our country.
What happens when care leavers don't get this kind of support?
So a lot of them are homeless, a lot of them are jobless, but we don't really have good statistics. We just know that there is no track record of successful interventions and successful help. If we don't help them, what they are facing is a life of poverty, a life of trying to avoid crime, trying to prevent their families getting back into the same cycle. I think that's the uncertain future that they face.
There is a huge responsibility to improve the present condition of care leavers in India, and a lot of changes need to take place to make this happen. Besides the work of organizations like Udayan Care, A Future for Every Child, Catalyst for Social Action, and others, there's still a gap. In all this, we ask Vipul what an optimistic and feasible vision for Aftercare could be.
So, what is your vision for Aftercare?
My vision is that every single child in need of care and protection is provided the right environment where the child can come up to his or her potential. And I believe that every child has a huge potential to do really, really well in life. These children, they're very responsive to support because they have received so little of it in the world. They actually value it far more than our own children would. And therefore, I think one can make a big difference in their lives. And that's my dream, that every single child in need of care and protection grows up to become a happy and contributing member of society.
It's said that a butterfly lives in its cocoon for 8 to 12 days before it's ready to fly away. If you try releasing it before they're ready, then you can damage them permanently. Just imagine. A large section of the vulnerable children of India spend close to 8 to 12 years in an institution. And if you release them before they're ready, the damage could be permanent and traumatic. So butterflies need support that they can climb and hang on to so that their wings can expand properly. Children in childcare institutions need aftercare support so they can spread their wings too and fly away confidently. Thanks for tuning in to Care of the State, a series by Catalyst for Social Action. We would love to hear from you, and if you have any questions or want to get involved in the work that CSA does, send an email to connect@csa.org.in. Conceptualized and hosted by Satyajeet Mazumdar. Marketing and Communications by Hinal Shah, Pranay Jajodia, and Kinjal Mehta. The creative team were Anuja Kokani and Shahaji Patel. This is a Made in India production. Writer and project manager, Veda Sushila Mohan. Production head and editor, Joshua Thomas. Sound mixing by Karthik Kulkarni. Project supervisor, Sean Phantom. And voiceover by May Mariam Thomas.